Hi guys, the episode that you're just about to listen to is generously sponsored by our affiliates Board Game Crate. Board Game Crate provide a monthly subscription service where they get fresh new games delivered straight to your door. Just head over to www.boardgamecrate.co.uk, and furthermore, if you use our discount code UnluckyFrogIsAwesome, all lowercase, all one word, you'll get a cheeky little discount. It's easy to remember because it's true.
Hello and welcome to the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Porter, and I'm joined this Independence Day by Tom Lovewell of Redwell Games.
Hello.
How are we doing, Tom?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Yeah, you sound very chipper for a man who's Thursday night had to deal with children and job and all that.
Because tomorrow is Friday and tomorrow is payday, and those two things are beautiful.
Yes, that is true. I am struggling somewhat, just being a bit tired, and it's that wonderful time of the year where everyone is sharing various cold and cough viruses and things.
Yes, I understand that. My little one brought back several of his from school.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because you were just saying that it was quite poetic. I think the phrase you used was last week you were streaming with gunge.
Yes, very, very, very much.
Yeah.
So. Rivers of green.
Yep, absolutely horrendous image, but quite descriptive nonetheless.
Yes.
So you're on to obviously have a chat with us about what you do in general, because it's long overdue. But
very much so.
You are also ramping up to releasing a new game.
Yes, Kazing is hitting Kickstarter, so it's a second Kickstarter, and it will be 30th of October. It hits the electronic thing that is Kickstarter.
That magnificent beast that's so very, very well known in the tabletop industry, loved and hated. I think it's can be a wee bit controversial.
Very much controversial.
Yeah, but is the friend of the independent developer for very good reason.
Yes, and depleted my wallet a few times as well.
Yes, I've been quite good for a while with Kickstarter, but I've been suckered in by Tidal Blades, I have to say. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've not seen that one.
There's always something on Kickstarter that's going to sucker more than a few of us in particularly with these ridiculous miniatures, because we always need more miniatures.
Or baby-sized bigatures.
Yep, I don't think anyone has quite gotten over that. But do you know, I heard it's not made from like the normal plastic that miniatures are cast in. Like someone told me it's quite like rubbery.
I just dread to think at the size of it, but I'm pretty dreadful at painting my miniatures at the best of times. So something that is that huge, it was never going to be on my radar. It's like, no, if I've got that and it's something that big for me to avoid painting, just seems a waste.
It's a hell of a commitment, that. It's like the do you remember a few years ago, Games Workshop brought out the Smaug miniature, the Smaug the dragon from the Hobbit, and I think the miniature it costs like between £200 and £300, but they make them up to order.
Yeah,
which makes sense with something that size, right? But...
So the biggest things that I've ever got around to painting are either warjacks or Lehman Russ tanks and things. But then it was just generally start with a spray, add a bit of camouflage for the tank. There we go, job done. Simple stuff.
Job's a good one.
Whereas the case of with that big thing. It was just like I just wouldn't know where to start, and it was a case of it probably looked like bad graffiti by the time I'd finished.
Yeah, and it's that thing is that when you've got something that size, you can sort of cheat with a smaller model. It's almost like you take this approach of like impressionism, like you do lots of little blobs and layers, and from a certain distance that looks quite nice. But when you scale it up like that, it could look pretty bad. Trying to apply the same techniques.
Well, my techniques are the distance, optimal distances across the room normally.
Yeah, so it's going to be quite hard with something like that.
Oh yeah. Well, I try to make sure whenever I'm playing tournaments that I don't have a silver or plastic hoard where possible. So there's paint on it, but it's not pretty.
Yeah, even if it's just like the 2 or 3 colors in the base, right? That's better than nothing.
Most of the time. There was one exception last year. I went to a tournament and literally just been given the box. So it's a case of, right, get the things out, use them. For 2 of the 3 games I played with painted stuff, and I went, well, and it was a Malifaux tournament, so it was choosing randomly which master I'd use. So the first 2 I'd use as the painted master, and the third one's like, well, I've not used this one, the last game. Let's actually just use Sonia straight from the box. Literally had stuck her together a couple of nights beforehand, so completely grey. But it's like, well, I've never actually played with her before, so yes, she's great, but you've also got me as a novice, and surprisingly, I managed to eke out a win, and I think that's the best I've ever done with her as well. So,
nice. And then obviously now when you get her painted, she's going to perform horrendously, because that's apparently like a scientific fact with miniatures, right? Is that when they're painted, they lose their mojo.
Beginner's luck. It was just very much a case of first game win, and since then it's just been a slide down. So I think paint might actually improve things. It can't make things any worse.
Okay, so she's maybe bucking the trend. All right. Anyway, we've talked quite a bit about little plastic men, so yes. we should maybe actually talk about what you're here to talk about.
Yes.
Let's talk about Redwell. So before we dive into Kazing a bit more, VoteMe was Redwell's first game, right? Which released this year.
It was this year. UK Games Expo. It was the first time there was actually physical copies. So it went on Kickstarter around Aircon time, just after Aircon, and it was at a low level, and it was basically me with the training wheels on. Learn how to do Kickstarter, start getting to hang with everything, because it's our little one, but Kazing has been my baby for a little longer. It's taken 2.5 years to develop to get to this stage, but VoteMe is a nice little game, fun sort of with groups and things, but it was a lot lighter in some respects than Kazing can be.
Sure.
And so this is for me to learn with, make sure I know what I'm doing, find a printer, get all the logistics sorted, so that next time when I come with something which has got a bit more for everybody on, like Kazing has, I know what I'm doing, and I can say to people, look, you can trust me. I'm asking for this amount, and I'm not going to mess you around, because I've done it once before. I don't know all the pit traps, because all things can happen, but I'm not learning right from the get-go. This is just now building from experience.
Yeah. So, you mentioned just there about trust.
Yes.
So VoteMe is quite a small game, both in terms of its physical size. It's a small box with a relatively small number of components, and it's a fairly modest price point as well. Was that a deliberate decision for the first game that Redwell released?
It's a deliberate decision for the first few that I'm doing. It's a case of, for me, wanting to make sure that anything I develop, I don't overextend myself. Because this is doing as Redwell Games, this isn't my first foray into the industry. I was actually a developer for on the Relics Miniatures game by Tor Gaming. So version 1 and 1.1, I was involved in that. And so I really got a feel from that element of making sure that what you're doing, keep it focused and things. And during that period where I was developing that, with Gavin. Well, Gavin was writing it. I was just sending him ideas and helping with the playtesting and things. But I developed some ideas for games, and then I came to them and went, yeah, this is a really good idea, but it's got 120 unique different cards and unique dice. And I just looked at it and went, this game is going to be too much of a pain to develop. Let's strip it down. Let's go down to something that's far more simplistic, that I can learn different types of playtesting, so playtesting card games, and develop and learn the industry that way. And that was how Kazing was born. And during that process, it was a case, well, Kazing works, but it's a little bit of a harder sell. And so VoteMe came in as a result of that, because VoteMe is very stripped down. The rules are on 6 sides of cards. So, and not all of them are, you must follow this. It's kind of the last 2 cards are the critical bits, which is all about the voting part for VoteMe. So the rest of it's very much a social improv game that you can adapt to your needs if you want to, but you don't have to follow the rules too heavily at all. So,
which was something that that we actually mentioned in the review that we wrote up for VoteMe, is that in a lot of ways it's a toolbox to play the game you want to play, right?
Oh, completely. I've given a very straightforward way of using them, but you could use it as a larger group option and just basically get people in a big group to play, to take the VoteMe elements, and then just sort of individually people say, yes, I like that one or not, and just use it as a guide for sort of improvisation sessions. I developed it because I've previously worked at the University of Sheffield, and I've given talks at conferences. And one of the things I've noticed with students was they're very reticent for the first time to get up and talk in front of an audience. And it was partly designed as a tool for people. Well, it's a bit of fun, it's lighthearted, but it's for people to get up and start talking. And it's a very good resource because it's only a minute. With the themes that are put in there, you can be silly, and so no one's going to kind of criticize you for being silly, because that's the point, having a bit of fun with it and just get used to talking. Sure. So, and that was kind of the genesis of that one, really.
And I, as I said in my review, I think it works very well in that respect. The production quality is very high as well.
That's always been important to me. Made sure, Gavin with Relics made sure that all the miniatures looked nice, or the artwork was nice. I was aware of that. I, like you, play plenty of games and have picked up some things where the artwork, you've got some really nice things, and then in the same box, legendary, for example, you've got some dog awful artwork, and you just go, I like the game, but that looks like someone has sat on that person's face and squished it into obscurity, and it looks awful. And so I've wanted to make sure that it's as a package looks nice. So, and similarly with rules, I've been sitting on Kazing for the last several months with most of the gameplay sorted, going through blind play testing several times to try and make sure that when it gets launched, I'm happy with the rule set that people can just pick up and go, I know how to play this from the rules booklet, rather than go, I'm going through the rules booklet and I don't know what I'm doing, and things like that. So I really wanted to make sure that what I released wasn't just some half-baked thing, that I spent the time making sure that it was right, and any delays from now to production will be making sure that whenever the game arrives in people's hands, it's of the best quality, not just in terms of the components, but in terms of the rules, in terms of the artwork, that people go, yeah, this feels like it's a proper game that people have spent time over.
Sounds like a plan. As far as VoteMe goes, as I've said, Unlucky Frog Gaming, we did a review on the blog where we spoke quite favourably of it.
Oh, very much
but
so.
It's actually won a couple of awards.
It has. So Imagination Gaming are but they're based in Huddersfield, and they're an education-based. I don't know. I think I'm going to get into deep trouble with the lovely people from there if I describe it incorrectly. But they run sessions in libraries and in schools with kids, with larger groups as well. In Sheffield, actually, we're really lucky being close to Huddersfield, that they've been to a number of the libraries in and around Sheffield and other places around the country. And it's all about engaging with children, but also with family groups. And larger than that, I think they did the Family Zone at UK Games Expo. And each year they run their gaming awards. And they put a bronze award for VoteMe in 3 different categories, which I was flabbergasted by. I just thought, well, it's the first thing we've released, just to be looked at was nice. But yes, it came away with bronze award for best literacy game, best cross-curriculum game, and best family game. So it's like, wow, that's quite nice.
Which is a testament to its potential as an educational tool, right?
Oh, very much so. It can be used sort of in the UK as a tool to help people engage with speech, but also describing things. It can be used, obviously, to sort of talk a little bit about politics, but it's been used in different countries. I know there's some people in Sweden that picked it up to use it to teach English as a foreign language. And it's because it's got that nice, it's that minute element where people are just talking, and it can really engage people with just trying to find some words in that period to talk. And normally with speech, you just need that hook of what topic do I start with? And just a couple of words can really give you that start point.
Yeah, but it's even things like the very clean, stripped down aesthetic helps with that, right? Like there's, I know I don't claim to be any expert with regards to education, but I know, particularly for like people that maybe struggle a bit with literacy, like dyslexia and things like that, that certain fonts lend themselves better to teaching.
It just fits. To be fair, the fonts kind of was a happy accident. The idea was always to have the icons, so the different parties, blue butterfly, orange jelly, red balloon, had a very clear colour associated with a very clear symbol, so that it would look colourful, unlike certain other party games that like just black and white. There was that colour element, but also if people struggled with colour, it didn't matter, because you go, well, that's very clearly an apple shape, that's very clearly a balloon shape. Doesn't matter if I can't tell the difference between the colours. So it was always an intent that people could tell the difference, regardless.
Yeah. So you've very much sort of proven yourself with VoteMe, I think it's safe to say, and we mentioned earlier on in the show that Kazing is in the works, and we've already talked a little bit about Kazing, but could you tell us the premise of the game?
Well, the premise of the game, well, I started off as a game. It's now, since actually I've been looking at it, it's more of a game system, but I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. The principle is casting spells. So everybody knows that wizards, witches, warlocks, sorcerers cast spells by either waving their hands or wands or staffs around with a magic word. There's always, it's not just sat meekly in the corner and magic happens. You do something. And the principle for Kazing is linking together a series of wand movements with a spell casting word at the end, and that's you casting a spell. And so using those cards to do that, I've put together 3 different games that you can play. So there's one game mode which I call Precision, which is all about starting in one place, finishing in a specific place, and just collecting the 9 different positions on the grid.
Yeah.
And that's one game mode. And this grid is very much like basically the artwork. There's a person stood up, and so you've got a 3x3 grid, which is all the different places you can reach to. So the head is position 2, it's at the top, so you can't go higher than there. Whereas the feet is position 8, it's at the bottom, because your arm can't go lower than that. And so it's all about this space around you where you're moving your wand.
Sure.
The other game mode I've called thaumaturgy, which is linked to, I think, the Greek word for power or something. But anyway, that's to do with longer spells are better spells. And so you score points for having more points for a longer spell than for a shorter spell. And the idea is get to the end of the game. Whoever's got the most points from spells wins the game that way. And the third way of playing is a bit like Wizard's Duel, a bit like Magic the Gathering, where both players, or all players, because it can be played in a group, have a set level of health, and your spells either cause damage to an opponent or can heal somebody. And so it uses the same cards, but actually the aim is different. And so a good card for making a long spell is often a bad card for causing damage to somebody. And so it really does depend on what type of game you're playing, how you look at things. But also linked in with that is there's 3 ways of playing, but there's also 3 difficulty levels. So there's the very basic learn to play option, which is you don't look at the different backgrounds, the different suits, or as we've called them, the magical resonance of the spell. So there's 4 of them within the game, and you just ignore them completely. But at the middle level, it comes in, and you say, right, at this middle level of difficulty, the magic word has to have the same resonance, the same suit as the last movement. And you can get both. But what's really nice is you can have somebody playing at the easy level, playing against somebody at that medium level of difficulty at the same time. And so it's balanced that way. And so you can have young people playing with older people, or people new to the game with experienced people, and all players get to have a challenging game because of this unique difficulty mechanism. And so you don't have... And that was part of the inspiration behind it, was I wanted to be able to play games with my son where I felt I was playing a game and I didn't have to sort of go, well, I'll let him win this one. I don't like having to do that. And so that's why I tried to invent something with that element. And there are other games, games like Scrabble. Generally, better Scrabble players are people who've played Scrabble a lot, know what the good words to go for, and can recognize it with practice. And it's a case of, well, you can't handicap someone so well to be able to play with people who are new to it, or people who have only been reading for a few years and have got a reduced vocabulary, for want of a better word. So I wanted to try and somehow incorporate that.
You'd mentioned earlier about how you're in the throes of creating a form of a database, essentially, that is in the future going to allow people to create their own games with Kazing.
Yes, you're right. The situation is, over the last few weeks, since spreading my net, the number of people to either preview or blind playtest wider, I've had feedback. I had good feedback from Giles out both sides of my table to do with the solo play version. And he's made suggestions about different things you could do with solo play. And it's just become more apparent to me that actually I've focused on 3 areas, but actually it's a set of cards and people could just use them to do different things and create their own games from it. And I want to encourage that. And so on the Kickstarter, there's going to be the details for a competition where people can submit either as an email to contact@redwellgames.com an idea for a game involving the Kazing cards, or comment on the Kickstarter page an idea of the game, of a new form of game using cards. And I'll close it at Christmas, and in the new year I'll say this person has submitted what we view, not just myself but other people that have been involved in helping with the playtesting of Kazing in Sheffield. We'll have a look at it. The one we think best, that person will win a copy of Kazing and a game mat. of course, the caveat being it needs to fund. But
of course,
yeah, if it doesn't fund, I'd love to give someone a copy of the game, but I won't have one.
Yep.
And hopefully,
stands to reason.
Over time, I would want to encourage different ways of playing. I've got a few other ideas, but I've just been focusing on 3 to start off with, and yeah, it would be really great to see people saying, well, actually, we've looked at it this way.
Sure. So are you quite a fan of games, systems, and components that allow people to create their own things, or is that a happy accident?
I think it was a happy accident, actually. It was just over time and almost the last few weeks, taking a step back and looking at it differently. It was like, actually, yes, I hadn't realized this. It was certainly not an intention. But, as I said, it's been 2 years in development, and only recently I've kind of become more aware of, actually, you can use it so many different ways if people just wanted to invent their own thing. But I've always been a games mechanic butterfly, going back to, well, if we go back to the miniatures, which, I play a few games, but I've actually I don't move within the same game to different factions. What I tend to do is move different game systems. So I played 40k, and I played Imperial Guard. I play Malifaux now, and I played Guild. I've played War Machine. I've played Flames of War. I play Underworld, Warhammer Underworlds. I play X-Wing. I generally stick within one faction within those. Warhammer Underworlds, a bit of a variation because it's so easy to just pick up a crew, but it's generally one faction, but each different game system has different mechanics, and that's what I find interesting. Playing with miniatures, but you've got different objectives and different either statistics that affect things or how they play. So you've got the standard roll of dice, hit a number for the Warhammer-based universes. It's the 2d6 system for War Machine. It was rolling doubles for relics. And all of those have differences, and that's what I find interesting. So all of the games that we've been developing, they're different from the previous one, at least the first few. So VoteMe is very much a social game, a talking game, very improv heavy. You've got a more typical card game with Kazing, where you have that set of cards, and you're trying to work out how to put them down, and there's a puzzle solving element. We're developing Six Gun Showdown for next year, and whilst that's a card game, there's very much a case of you choose your 6 cards, you lay them down, and there's then that tactical element of trying to work out what's the best 6 cards to play down based on your opponent. There's an element of trying to outwit your opponent with an element of bluffing and also reaction speeds. And so it's still cards like Kazing, it's still cards like VoteMe, but the mechanics are different, and those are the things that interest me as a designer.
Yeah, sounds great. We are a Lucky Frog. We're quite interested in the people behind the games as much as the games themselves. And although we know you as Tom Lovewell of Redwell Games, game designer and gamer, you, as your day job, are a biochemist.
Yes. Well, I've gone for Redwell Games because, unfortunately, Lovewell Games is not quite so family friendly. But the fact that I've got a PhD as well, Dr. Lovewell has hit a number of spam filters in the past, unfortunately.
Ah, I see.
Yes. Yes, when I first started dating my now wife, she had to go to the IT department at her job because despite having a university email address, their spam filters were set a little bit too high. And so it would just disappear into the spam when I'd say, what time are you finishing? I'll come and meet you on the way home or something from work. It's just straight into spam because Lovewell was a little bit too risque.
Okay, so why is Lovewell in particular risque?
Because Dr. Lovewell sounds a bit porn star, sir. But the best bit
pure and simple. It just sounds pornographic. There's no specific reason.
Well, add to the other fact that if people search, if anyone who does science and knows of PubMed, you'll be able to find me on there because I've got a few publications out. It's Thomas Richard John Lovewell. So not only is it Dr. Lovewell, there's also a Dick and a John Thomas in my name to make it proper porn stuff.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Dick John Lovewell.
Yeah.
I think he needs to appear as a character in something now.
Alongside Horatio Slice.
Yeah, I think so. The Adventures of Horatio Slice and Dr. John Dick Lovewell.
Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists, the X-rated version.
Oh, wow. Where do we go from here, Tom?
Instead of ham night, it's sausage night. I don't know. We can only go up, surely. It can only go up.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
I think.
Yes. So I could talk about my research just to kind of up the level. I used to do research on autoimmune diseases. I don't know how to finish this.
Oh, man. From the ridiculous to the sublime to the ridiculous again.
Yes, I try to pretend that I'm intellectual, but I really am not.
No, you can see it there. I don't know. I feel like silliness kind of comes with intellectualism.
Oh, very much so. As anyone who saw me at Tabletop Scotland, I was walking around with a Hawaiian shirt and a wizard's hat on half the time.
Yeah, I think there's more of an intrinsic link between silliness and intellectualism than a lot of people like to admit at times.
Yeah, well, you can't be sensible all the time. The other way I view it is, I think sometimes just the brain cells shut down and go, no, you've used us too much, and so kind of we're having a sleep now. Let the rest have a party instead.
Well, it's not just that. Like a lot of the intellectuals that I've met, some of the most strange people, and they've got a way of looking at the world, and I think this is part of like having an intellectual brain. They've got a way of looking at the world that's just so far removed from everyone else that some of the stuff they hit out with, you think, what are you doing? There's one guy in particular, he's a family friend, will not mention any names. He put up a post on Facebook about how he didn't understand why he was getting odd looks on the train whenever he took out his banana holder.
Right, yes. But they're very practical. The number of times I have had squished bananas at the bottom of a bag.
Yeah, and they do straight up just look like sex objects. There is that, though.
But so do cigars.
But that is the price you pay for an immaculate banana.
Or, in my case, the price that I should have paid so that I didn't have half squished banana and half banana-y paperwork.
So did you actually have to go to your boss and say, a banana soiled my homework?
No,
that's why.
No, because most of the stuff is typed up. The advantage of having rubbish handwriting is I knew I needed to get a PhD, so I had an excuse. It's like, yeah, you can't read my handwriting because I'm a doctor. You had to do like 10 years in the system in order to justify your abysmal handwriting. That was the only answer to it. It was my handwriting ever since I was young has been bobbins, and so it's like, I need to get a PhD clearly because I've got rubbish handwriting, so I need the excuse. Plus, I then get to have a very pun able name as well. So win-win.
See, I've got no excuse. My handwriting just looks like Arabic, and I'm not a doctor. I just have really bad handwriting.
Yeah,
and there you go.
Well, I spend 10 years in the system, and find some way to get an excuse.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Anyway, on that bizarre note, I think that's just about all we've got time for. But before we wrap this up, for people who are interested in Redwell games and in particular Kazing, where do they need to go?
Well, we're quite active on Twitter, and so we'll definitely be announcing on Twitter when Kazing is launching on Kickstarter. It will be on the 30th of October, but there will be the links there. I'll obviously send you guys a link to the Kickstarter page. But if you search for Redwell Games on Kickstarter, you'll find it. And just like VoteMe, it's coming in at a really cheap price. I think the highest price for a game is £16. So it's nice and compact that way. So people should go have a look at it. And yeah, Twitter and Kickstarter. But we are at redwellgames.com. I also exist on Facebook. And I've been pushed into using Instagram, but I still haven't worked it out yet.
I find Instagram easier to use than Twitter, I think. But that's just me.
I don't do enough pictures of things, I think. So
okay.
I really struggle with, I'll take a picture of that. I think this is where my science brain is wired strange. I can't do pictures.
Oh, well, see, I'm quite visually orientated, so I guess we're kind of like opposites in that way. Whereas I just don't like Twitter. Anyway, Tom, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, good sir.
Yep, I'm sure we'll hear from you again.
Oh, very much.
And for all of our listeners, wherever you are, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hi everyone, it's Charlotte from the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Now be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. All you need to do is search Unlucky Frog Gaming. You can also show your support for the Unlucky Frog through Patreon. To find out more information, check out our website www.unluckyfrog.com. Thanks, bye!